Close your eyes, let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are resting. Tonight, we are going on the longest journey imaginable, not forward into the future, but backward deep into the past, far beyond anything written in any book. Far beyond the first campfire, the first stone tool, the first human footprint pressed into soft mud. We are going back to a world so ancient, so utterly different from our own that the air itself would be unfamiliar to us. We are going back to the age of the dinosaurs. But to understand that age, we must begin even earlier, at the very beginning of everything. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old, born from a single, incomprehensibly dense point of energy in an event we call the Big Bang. In the first fractions of a second, everything that would ever exist, every atom in every star, every grain of sand on every ancient beach, every bone of every creature that ever lived was already set in motion. The story of the dinosaurs begins here, in that first silent, blazing instant. Let that settle over you, 13.8 billion years. It is a number too large to truly feel, but you don't need to feel it tonight. Just let it wash over you like a warm tide going out. For billions of years, the universe expanded and cooled. Stars were born and died in great, slow explosions, and from the scattered remnants of those dying stars, the iron, the carbon, the oxygen cast outward into the dark, new worlds began to form. Our solar system, including the Earth, formed approximately 4.6 billion years ago from a swirling cloud of gas and dust left behind by an earlier generation of stars. This means that the calcium in dinosaur bones, and in your bones right now, was forged inside the heart of a star that died long before our sun ever ignited. We are all, in the most literal sense, made of stardust. Earth in its earliest days was nothing like the world we know. It was a violent, molten place, a surface of churning lava, bombarded constantly by asteroids, wrapped in a toxic atmosphere of methane and carbon dioxide. No ocean, no sky as we would recognize it, no life at all. But the Earth was cooling. Slowly, patiently, over hundreds of millions of years it cooled. The Earth's oceans formed roughly 4 billion years ago, when water, delivered partly by icy comets and asteroids from the outer solar system, and partly released from the planet's own volcanic activity, accumulated on the cooling surface and remained liquid. The first rain fell on hot, dark rock, and then it kept falling for millions of years until the oceans were full. Let yourself imagine that rain on a young world, with no one to hear it. And then, in those warm, mineral-rich oceans, something extraordinary happened. Something that would eventually lead, through an almost unimaginable chain of events, to creatures the size of buildings walking the Earth. Life on Earth first appeared approximately 3.7 to 4 billion years ago in the form of single-celled microorganisms. These ancient bacteria were not dramatic, they left no footprints, they had no eyes to see with no hearts to beat, and yet they were alive, the first living things on an entire planet, quietly dividing and multiplying in the dark water, changing the chemistry of the world around them, one breath at a time. For most of Earth's history, this is all there was: single cells, patient, persistent, invisible life. Breathe slowly, there is no hurry on this journey. The Earth itself is a patient traveler. For over 2 billion years, life remained simple, but the world was quietly being prepared for something more. Oxygen, produced as a waste product by early photosynthetic bacteria, was gradually accumulating in the atmosphere. It was, for many early life forms, a catastrophe, but for others it was an invitation. Around 541 million years ago, in a period geologists call the Cambrian explosion, the diversity of animal life on Earth increased with astonishing speed. Within a relatively short span of geological time, perhaps 20 to 25 million years, most of the major groups of animals we recognize today, including the ancestors of all vertebrates, appeared in the fossil record for the first time. The ocean, which had been quiet for so long, was suddenly full of eyes and shells and soft, wriggling forms. Among those early creatures were small, soft-bodied fish, the first vertebrates, creatures with backbones, creatures that in time would find their way out of the water. The world continues to turn, stars wheel overhead in the darkness, and somewhere in a shallow, warm sea, a fish is exploring the edge of the land. Approximately 375 million years ago, the first vertebrate animals began making the transition from water to land. Creatures like Tiktaalik, a remarkable fish with protolimbs, capable of propping itself up and moving in shallow water, represent the bridge between aquatic and terrestrial life. These were not yet reptiles, not yet dinosaurs, but they were the ancestors of every four-limbed animal that would ever walk the Earth, including, eventually, the great sauropods whose footsteps would shake the ground like slow thunder. Let your limbs feel heavy and still. Let the weight of your body press gently into the bed. Life was moving onto land, and land at this time was one vast, unbroken continent, a single supercontinent that geologists would one day call Pangaea, all the land on Earth pressed together into one enormous mass surrounded by a single world ocean. Fact 7. By around 300 million years ago, the supercontinent of Pangaea was fully formed, bringing together what would eventually become every modern continent, North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Antarctica, and Australia, into a single landmass. The interior of Pangaea was a harsh, arid place far from the moderating influence of the ocean, but at the edges, in the warm coastal zones, life was flourishing. Reptiles had arrived, small, scaly, efficient creatures that did not need to return to water to lay their eggs. They had cracked the code of living entirely on land. And from among these early reptiles, one particular lineage was growing quietly more successful, more upright, more efficient in the way they moved. The ancestors of the dinosaurs, known as archosaurs, first appeared around 250 million years ago. They shared the world with many other reptile groups, and at first they were not the dominant animals. They were mid-sized, perhaps unremarkable-looking creatures in a world of strange and varied life, but they had one crucial advantage in the difficult times that were coming: resilience. Because the world was about to experience something terrible. Rest now, breathe. The night is long and the story has barely begun. Approximately 252 million years ago, the Earth experienced the most devastating mass extinction event in its history, an event scientists call the Permian-Triassic extinction, sometimes known simply as the Great Dying. Over 90 to 96% of all marine species and around 70% of all land vertebrate species were wiped out. Volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and other gases, destabilizing the climate catastrophically. The oceans acidified, the atmosphere turned toxic, the world went very, very quiet. It is sobering to think about a planet almost emptied of complex life, and yet in that emptiness there was space, space for the survivors to spread, space for something new to rise. Let the thought drift through you gently, like smoke across water. The archosaurs, those resilient proto-relatives of the dinosaurs, were among the survivors, and in the wake of the Great Dying, with so many ecological niches left vacant, they began to diversify, to explore new ways of living, to grow. The very first true dinosaurs appeared approximately 231 to 243 million years ago, during the Triassic period. They emerged in what is now South America, in the ancient landmass that would one day become Argentina and Brazil. These earliest dinosaurs were small bipedal creatures, perhaps no larger than a turkey or a large dog. They ran on two legs, they were quick, and they were hungry. They were not yet the giants of popular imagination, but they were dinosaurs, and the world, recovering and greening after the Great Dying, was waiting for them. The Triassic world was warm and dry across much of Pangaea. Ferns and seed ferns covered the ground. Early conifers and cycads, strange palm-like trees, grew in the more humid regions. There were no flowers yet, no grasses. The world was green, but it was a different kind of green, older, quieter. During the Triassic period, dinosaurs were not the dominant land animals. They shared their world with a variety of other reptile groups, including the rhynchosaurs, etosaurs, and the large, often crocodile-like rorisuchians. For millions of years, dinosaurs were a minor part of the ecosystem, one successful group among many. Their eventual rise to dominance was not inevitable, at least not at first glance. It would take another catastrophe to clear the way. Breathe in, breathe out. The world is always changing, always making room. And the dinosaurs in their quiet Triassic origins were learning to run, learning to hunt, learning to grow larger. Some were beginning to try something new with their front limbs, something that would, in certain lineages, eventually become wings. Scientists divide dinosaurs into two major groups based on the structure of their hips. The Saurischia, meaning lizard-hipped, includes the giant long-necked sauropods and the fierce theropods like T-Rex. The Ornithischia, meaning bird-hipped, includes the horned ceratopsians, the armored ankylosaurs, and the plated stegosaurs. These two lineages diverged very early in dinosaur evolution, meaning that from almost the very beginning, dinosaurs were already branching into the extraordinary variety we would come to know millions of years later. The Triassic ticked on, and then, around 201 million years ago, the world shook again. At the boundary between the Triassic and Jurassic periods, approximately 201 million years ago, another major extinction event reshaped life on Earth. Massive volcanic activity, this time in what is now the Central Atlantic region, as Pangaea began to break apart, triggered rapid climate change, acidified the oceans, and wiped out many of the reptile groups that had competed with the dinosaurs. When the ash settled and the world recovered, the dinosaurs were at last alone at the top. The age of the dinosaurs, the Jurassic period, had begun. You might imagine it like a long, slow sunrise, not sudden, not dramatic, just the gradual arrival of something inevitable, something that had been quietly growing in the dark. And now into the Jurassic world, a world that was beginning to break apart, as the mighty Pangaea slowly cracked and drifted, opening warm shallow seas between the separating continents, bringing more rain, more humidity, more life to the edges of the land. As Pangaea broke apart during the Jurassic period, the resulting changes in ocean circulation and rainfall patterns transformed much of the previously arid continental interior into a lush, humid landscape. Forests of conifers, tree ferns, and cycads spread across the land. The increase in plant life supported an explosion of herbivorous dinosaurs, and where the plant-eaters thrived, the predators followed. This was the engine of dinosaur gigantism: abundant food, warm climate and time, enormous amounts of time. Let yourself feel the warmth of that ancient world, the air thick with humidity, the smell of ferns after rain, the deep green of a world with no autumn, no frost, no bare branches. And in that lush world, something was beginning to grow very, very large. The sauropods, the long-necked, long-tailed, four-legged giants of the dinosaur world, reached their greatest sizes during the Jurassic period. Dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus roamed the floodplains and forests of what is now North America, Africa, and Europe. Diplodocus could reach lengths of over 25 meters, roughly the length of 2.5 double-decker buses placed end to end. And yet, despite their immense size, they moved with a kind of slow, patient grace, sweeping their long necks through the treetops like enormous living cranes. Imagine them now, if you like, vast shapes moving quietly through the trees in the golden afternoon light of a Jurassic day, the ground trembling gently with each step. Sauropods possessed remarkably small brains relative to their enormous body size. A fully grown Brachiosaurus, which could weigh as much as 56 tons, heavier than 9 African elephants, had a brain roughly the size of a tennis ball, and yet this was not a disadvantage in any meaningful sense. The sauropods were extraordinarily successful animals. They survived and thrived for over 140 million years. By comparison, our own species has existed for less than 300,000 years. Intelligence, it seems, is only one of many paths to success. Let your own thoughts grow soft and slow now. There is nothing to solve tonight, nothing to work out, just the sound of the world breathing around you. To sustain their enormous bodies, the giant sauropods needed to consume vast quantities of plant matter. Estimates suggest that a large sauropod may have needed to eat between 100 and 400 kilograms of vegetation every single day. They likely ate almost continuously, moving slowly through the landscape in small herds, stripping leaves from the high branches of conifers and cycads that no other animal could reach. In this way, they shaped the very landscape around them, like great slow gardeners, pruning and thinning the ancient forests. The world breathes in rhythm, in and out, day and night, the great sauropods moving through the trees like the slow beat of the world's own heart. And they were not alone. The Jurassic period saw an extraordinary diversity of dinosaur life. While the giant sauropods dominated the landscape in terms of sheer size, they shared their world with dozens of other dinosaur species: fast, agile ornithopods grazing at ground level, armored spike-tailed stegosaurs browsing in the undergrowth, and a variety of theropod predators ranging from small, swift hunters to large, powerful carnivores. The Jurassic was not a world with one kind of dinosaur. It was a world teeming with them, each filling its own particular role in the great web of life. Among the theropods, the bipedal, typically carnivorous dinosaurs, one genus has become perhaps the most famous predator of the Jurassic: Allosaurus. Allosaurus was one of the apex predators of the late Jurassic period, living approximately 155 to 145 million years ago in what is now North America. A large Allosaurus could reach 9 to 12 meters in length and weigh up to 2 tons. It hunted using a distinctive strategy. Unlike later large theropods, Allosaurus may have used its upper jaw like a hatchet, driving it down into prey with great force rather than simply biting. Fossil evidence suggests it may have targeted large sauropods, attacking in coordinated groups or scavenging the carcasses of animals that had died by other means. Let that image settle quietly: the dappled light of a Jurassic forest floor, the distant sound of something large moving through the trees. And now let us speak of armor. The stegosaurs, perhaps the most immediately recognizable of all Jurassic dinosaurs, were large, slow-moving herbivores equipped with 2 rows of distinctive bony plates running along their backs and a fearsome cluster of spikes at the end of their tails. Stegosaurus itself could reach 9 meters in length and weigh up to 5 tons. The purpose of the back plates has been debated for generations. They may have been used for temperature regulation, for for display to attract mates or intimidate rivals, or some combination of both. The tail spikes, however, had a purpose that seems beyond dispute. They were weapons, capable of delivering powerful, potentially lethal blows to even a large predator. The stegosaurs walked slowly through their world, unhurried, their great plates perhaps flushing pink or red in the morning sun, like sails catching the light. Sleep is close now, you can feel it, perhaps that soft, slow weight at the edges of your thoughts. One of the most enduring myths about dinosaurs is that they were all slow, cold-blooded, and sluggish, more like giant lizards than the dynamic animals we now understand them to have been. Modern science has overturned this picture almost completely. Evidence from bone structure, growth rates, and the existence of their living descendants, birds, strongly suggest that many dinosaurs were warm-blooded, or at least had much higher metabolic rates than modern reptiles. Some were covered in feathers. Many likely moved with speed and agility that would surprise us. The dinosaurs were not failed reptiles. They were in many ways more like very large, very successful birds. That image is worth sitting with for a moment. The Jurassic world, alive with feathered, warm-blooded creatures, some the size of sparrows, some the size of buildings. The link between dinosaurs and modern birds is not a loose metaphor or a distant evolutionary suggestion. It is one of the most well-supported conclusions in all of paleontology. Birds are, in the most precise scientific sense, theropod dinosaurs. They are the direct, living descendants of a group of small, feathered, two-legged dinosaurs. Every sparrow on every telephone wire, every pigeon in every city square, every eagle riding a thermal high above a mountain, each one is a dinosaur, carrying forward a lineage that has survived for over 230 million years. When you next hear birdsong in the morning, you will perhaps hear it slightly differently. Archaeopteryx, discovered in the limestone deposits of what is now Bavaria, Germany, and dated to approximately 150 million years ago, remains one of the most celebrated fossils ever found. It sits precisely at the transition between non-avian dinosaurs and modern birds, possessing both the wings and feathers of a bird, and the teeth, clawed fingers, and bony tail of a small theropod dinosaur. It is a snapshot frozen in stone, a single frame from the long, slow film of evolution, caught at exactly the right moment to show us what that moment of transition looked like. The world is full of transitions, if you know where to look. And so the Jurassic world turns warm and green and loud with the sound of living things, the sauropods moving like slow hills through the trees, the predators watching from the shadows, the first birds feathered, cautious, remarkable, taking to the air above the ferns. The Jurassic period lasted approximately 56 million years, from roughly 201 to 145 million years ago. To put that in perspective, the gap between us and the last non-avian dinosaurs is approximately 66 million years. The Jurassic period was nearly as long as that entire gap. The dinosaurs did not simply appear and vanish, they endured, they adapted, they filled every corner of every ecosystem on every continent for spans of time so vast they dwarf our ability to imagine them. 56 million years of green, warm, dinosaur-filled world. Let that thought carry you gently, like a current in deep water. You are doing beautifully, your breathing is slower now, the world outside is quiet, and we are here together drifting through deep time, through a world of giants and ferns and ancient skies, moving softly towards sleep. The Jurassic is giving way, the climate is shifting just slightly, the seasons are becoming a little more pronounced. The Great Pangea continues to drift apart, the Atlantic Ocean widening year by year, centimeter by centimeter, and in the changing world the dinosaurs are changing too. A new period is beginning, the Cretaceous, and it will be the most extraordinary chapter of all. But that story will keep. For now, let the ancient world hold you. Let the deep past wrap around you like something warm and still and very, very old. Rest now, we will continue soon. We left the Jurassic world just a moment ago, that warm, fern-green, sauropod-filled world of ancient conifers and shallow inland seas. And now, gently, without hurry, we step forward in time. The Cretaceous period has begun. It began approximately 145 million years ago, and it would last, with extraordinary richness and variety, for nearly 80 million years. It is the longest of the three great dinosaur periods, and it is, in many ways, the most remarkable. The Cretaceous period lasted from approximately 145 to 66 million years ago, a span of nearly 79 million years. During this time, the continents continued their slow drift toward their modern positions. The Atlantic Ocean widened. India broke free from what is now Antarctica and began its long journey northward. The world was becoming very gradually something we might almost recognize, though it was still profoundly, beautifully alien. The seas were warmer than today. There were no polar ice caps. Shallow, warm epicontinental seas flooded large portions of the continents, including a great inland sea that divided North America into two separate landmasses for much of the period. The world was warm from pole to pole, and life, as it always does in warmth, was abundant. One of the most transformative events of the entire Cretaceous, arguably one of the most transformative events in the entire history of life on Earth, was the appearance and rapid spread of flowering plants. Before the Cretaceous, the world's vegetation was dominated by conifers, cycads, ferns, and mosses, a landscape of green and grey, beautiful but without color in the way we understand it. Then, around 130 million years ago, the first flowering plants appeared. Within a few tens of millions of years, they had spread across the globe, transforming the appearance and the ecology of the world entirely. The dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous walked through a world that had color in it, petals, perhaps of ancient white and yellow, trembling in a warm Cretaceous breeze. Let that image bloom softly in your mind, a world coming into color, ancient flowers opening in a morning that was 100 million years ago. And with the flowers came the insects that fed on them, and with the insects came new pressures, new opportunities, new shapes of life. The Cretaceous world was not a static place. It was dynamic, evolving, restless with change. The Cretaceous world supported an astonishing diversity of dinosaur species, far greater than the Jurassic that preceded it. Scientists have identified well over 1,000 distinct dinosaur species from the Cretaceous period, and this almost certainly represents only a fraction of the species that actually existed, since fossilization is an extraordinarily rare event. Most animals that ever lived left no trace at all. Every dinosaur fossil is a small miracle, a message from the deep past that somehow survived the crushing weight of time. Think of that, every bone, every footprint, every scale impression preserved in stone, a small miracle, carried through 70 or 80 or 100 million years just to reach us. Among the most remarkable of the Cretaceous dinosaurs were the hadrosaurs, sometimes called the duck-billed dinosaurs, a highly successful group of ornithopod dinosaurs that thrived in the late Cretaceous period. Hadrosaurs were herbivores, and they were extraordinarily well adapted to processing tough plant material. Their jaws contained hundreds of tightly packed teeth, forming what paleontologists call a dental battery, that were continuously replaced throughout their lives, allowing them to grind through coarse vegetation with remarkable efficiency. Some species had elaborate bony crests on their heads, which may have been used to produce resonant calls, like great slow horns echoing across the Cretaceous floodplains. Imagine those calls drifting across an ancient wetland at dusk, low, resonant, haunting, the hadrosaur herds moving together through the late afternoon light. Hadrosaurs appear to have lived in herds and shown complex social behavior. Fossil evidence, including nesting sites with eggs and juvenile dinosaurs at various stages of development, suggests that at least some hadrosaur species engaged in extended parental care, tending their young in nests for weeks or months after hatching, much as many modern birds do today. One genus, Maiasaura, whose name means good mother lizard, was named specifically in recognition of this evidence of nurturing behavior. The idea of a dinosaur as a devoted parent, watching over a nest of small, chirping young, feels suddenly very tender, very familiar. Let your breathing slow a little more, in and out. The Cretaceous world was alive with sound and color and motion, and somewhere, moving through the forests of what would one day become North America, a new kind of predator was quietly growing into something extraordinary. The ceratopsian dinosaurs, the horned dinosaurs, were one of the most visually spectacular groups of the Cretaceous period. Characterized by their elaborate bony frills and facial horns, they ranged in size from small, frill-less ancestors no larger than a sheep to enormous, rhinoceros-like giants. The frill and horns of the ceratopsians were almost certainly used for species recognition and display, each species having its own distinctive arrangement, like a flag or a face, allowing individual animals to identify members of their own kind from a distance. The ceratopsians were, in their own way, a kind of living art, each species wearing its identity in bone, carrying its lineage on its face. And the most famous of them all was still to come. Rest easy, we are moving deeper into the Cretaceous now. The world is warm, the flowers are blooming, and the greatest predator that ever walked the earth is about to make its entrance. Triceratops, perhaps the most beloved of all the horned dinosaurs, lived during the very end of the Cretaceous period, between approximately 68 and 66 million years ago. It was among the last non-avian dinosaurs to walk the earth. A fully grown Triceratops could reach 9 meters in length and weigh up to 12 tons. It bore 3 facial horns, 2 long brow horns above the eyes and a shorter nasal horn, and a large, solid bony frill behind the skull. Despite its fearsome appearance, it was a herbivore, grazing on low-lying vegetation with its parrot-like beak. It was, in every sense, a gentle giant. And it shared its world, its very last world, with the creature we have been moving toward all along. Tyrannosaurus rex lived approximately 68 to 66 million years ago in what is now Western North America, during the final 2 million years of the Cretaceous period. A fully grown individual could reach 12 to 13 meters in length and weigh between 8 and 14 tons, making it one of the largest terrestrial predators in Earth's history. The largest known specimen, nicknamed Sue, housed at the Field Museum in Chicago, has a skull alone that measures 1.5 meters in length. When you stand beside it, the sheer scale of the animal is difficult to process. It fills the room. It fills the imagination. Let that settle quietly. A skull larger than most of us are tall. The bite force of Tyrannosaurus rex was the most powerful of any terrestrial animal known to science. Estimates based on skull structure and muscle mass suggest that an adult T-Rex could exert a bite force of between 35,000 and 57,000 newtons, enough to crush bone as easily as we might bite through a cracker. T-Rex was not merely biting through flesh. It was processing entire bones, extracting the marrow within, consuming its prey completely and efficiently. Fossilized bones have been found with T-Rex tooth marks pressed deep into them, bones of triceratops, of hadrosaurs, of animals that were among the largest creatures alive at that time. Breathe, let the weight of your body settle. For many decades, Tyrannosaurus rex was depicted as a purely upright animal, tail dragging on the ground, neck stretched vertically upward like a living tower. Modern science has corrected this picture significantly. We now know that T-Rex, like all theropod dinosaurs, held its body roughly horizontal, backbone parallel to the ground, tail extended behind for balance, head held forward. It moved more like a very large bird than like the movie monster of popular imagination. And it moved, when it needed to, with considerable speed. Estimates suggest a maximum walking speed of around 20 kilometers per hour, and some researchers believe it was capable of short bursts of faster movement. Perhaps the most surprising revision to our understanding of Tyrannosaurus rex in recent decades is the possibility, supported by a growing body of evidence, that it was partially feathered. Close relatives of T-Rex, discovered primarily in China, have been found with clear evidence of feathers or proto-feathers preserved in the fossil record. Whether adult T-Rex retained significant feathering or had mostly scaly skin remains debated, but juvenile T-Rex almost certainly had a covering of downy feathers. The Tyrant King may have been in its youth something rather fluffy. The thought is both startling and somehow endearing. The night is quiet around you, soft, still. Tyrannosaurus rex had famously small forelimbs, two-fingered arms that seem almost comically disproportionate relative to the animal's enormous body. The function of these small arms has puzzled scientists for generations. They were not entirely without strength. The arm muscles of a T-Rex were actually quite powerful, capable of lifting perhaps 200 kilograms. But their reach was so limited that they could not even touch each other in front of the animal's body. Recent hypotheses suggest they may have been used to grip prey at close quarters during feeding, or to help the animal rise from the ground after lying down. Whatever their purpose, they endured for millions of years of T-Rex evolution, which suggests they were useful for something. T-Rex is believed to have had exceptionally acute senses. Its eye sockets suggest eyes that were large and forward-facing, providing binocular vision and excellent depth perception, the kind of visual system associated with active predators that need to judge distances accurately. Its olfactory bulbs, the brain structures responsible for processing smell, were enormous relative to its brain size, suggesting a sense of smell comparable to that of a modern turkey vulture, capable of detecting the scent of a carcass from many kilometers away. And new research into the structure of the T-Rex skull suggests it may have been able to detect very low-frequency infrasound, deep vibrations in the earth, allowing it to sense the movement of large animals from a considerable distance. A predator that could smell you from kilometers away, that could feel the vibration of your footsteps through the ground, that could track you through ancient forests with a precision we can barely imagine. And yet here you are, safe, still, wrapped in the quiet of the night, drifting towards sleep. Despite its fearsome reputation, Tyrannosaurus rex was almost certainly both a predator and a scavenger, opportunistically feeding on carcasses when available, as most large predators do today. The debate about whether T-Rex was primarily a hunter or primarily a scavenger occupied paleontologists for many years, but the current consensus is clear: it was almost certainly both. Its speed, visual acuity, and sensory sophistication suggest an active hunter. Its enormous olfactory capability suggests an animal very much at home following the smell of death across a wide landscape. It was, like most great predators, simply an opportunist taking food wherever it found it, in whatever form it arrived. The Cretaceous world turns slowly, the flowers bloom, the hadrosaurs call across the wetlands, and somewhere in the long shadows of the late afternoon, a shape the size of a bus moves quietly through the trees. While Tyrannosaurus rex is the most famous predator of the Cretaceous, it was not the only remarkable carnivore of its age. Spinosaurus, which lived in what is now North Africa around 95 to 100 million years ago, well before T-Rex, may have been even longer, with some estimates placing it at 14 to 15 meters or more in length. Spinosaurus was a remarkable and unusual creature, a large theropod that appears to have been semi-aquatic, spending significant time in rivers and coastal waters, hunting fish with its long, narrow, crocodile-like skull. It bore a tall sail or possibly a muscular hump along its back, the function of which remains uncertain. It was, by any measure, one of the strangest and most spectacular animals that ever lived. Let the strangeness of it settle over you like something warm, a world so different from our own that even its monsters were unexpected. The ankylosaurs were among the most heavily armored animals in Earth's history. These low-slung, four-legged herbivores were covered from head to tail in thick bony plates called osteoderms, armor embedded directly in the skin, and in many species the tail ended in a massive, solid club of fused bone, capable of delivering a blow powerful enough to shatter the leg bones of a large theropod predator. Ankylosaurus itself, the largest and best-known member of the group, could reach 8 meters in length and weigh up to 8 tons. It was, in essence, a living tank, a creature so well defended that even T-Rex may have been reluctant to take it on directly. There is something deeply restful about the ankylosaurs, slow, armored, unhurried, moving through the world with the confidence of something that knows it cannot easily be harmed. Not all of the extraordinary animals of the Cretaceous were dinosaurs. The skies above the dinosaurs were ruled by the pterosaurs, a group of flying reptiles that had first appeared in the Triassic and had, by the Cretaceous, evolved into some of the largest flying animals in Earth's history. Quetzalcoatlus, which lived in North America near the end of the Cretaceous, had a wingspan of up to 10 to 11 meters, roughly the wingspan of a small aircraft. When standing on the ground, it would have been as tall as a giraffe. It was almost certainly capable of powered flight, launching itself with its enormously powerful forelimbs and riding thermals high above the Cretaceous landscape with a slow, vast, terrifying grace. Picture it for a moment, a creature with a wingspan the width of a room, riding warm air currents above the ancient forests, its shadow moving slowly across the treetops below. While the pterosaurs ruled the air, the oceans of the Cretaceous were dominated by their own caste of giants. The mosasaurs, large, predatory marine reptiles closely related to modern monitor lizards, reached extraordinary sizes during the late Cretaceous. Mosasaurus itself could reach 13 meters or more in length, and it was among the apex predators of the Cretaceous seas, hunting fish, ammonites, sea turtles, and even other mosasaurs. The Cretaceous oceans were not the quiet, blue expanses we might imagine. They were warm, shallow, and full of enormous, fast-moving predators, moving beneath a surface broken by the ripples of something vast. The world above, the world below, both teeming with life on a scale almost impossible to comprehend. Also sharing the Cretaceous seas were the plesiosaurs, long-necked marine reptiles that had persisted from the earlier Jurassic period. With their barrel-shaped bodies, 4 broad flippers, and extraordinarily long necks, plesiosaurs were unlike anything alive today. The largest plesiosaurs, the pliosaurs among them, were short-necked, massive-skulled predators of extraordinary power. Kronosaurus, for example, had a skull nearly 3 meters long. The plesiosaurs moved through the water by essentially flying through it, rowing with all 4 flippers in a motion more akin to a sea turtle or a penguin than a fish. They were, by all accounts, elegant swimmers in a world of giants. Your breath moves in and out, the ancient ocean moves in and out, in and out. The diversity of life in the Cretaceous extended even to the smallest creatures. The first true flowering plant pollinators, including early bees and butterflies, were evolving alongside the flowering plants during this period, locked in that ancient and beautiful evolutionary dance in which flower and insect shape each other across millions of years. The first ants appeared, the first moths. Beneath the feet of the enormous ceratopsians and hadrosaurs, a world of small, intricate life was flourishing, a world that would one day, long after the dinosaurs were gone, give rise to the insects and flowering plants that surround us today. The great and the small living side by side, always. Small mammals had existed alongside the dinosaurs for almost the entire Mesozoic era, throughout the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. But for most of that time, they were relegated to the margins, Small, largely nocturnal, shrew-like creatures that moved carefully through a world dominated by much larger animals. For over 150 million years, mammals were the quiet, cautious underdogs of the vertebrate world, and yet they endured. They persisted through two mass extinction events, through climate shifts, through the rise and fall of entire ecosystems. Their patience would, in the fullness of time, be rewarded in ways they could not have imagined. We are their descendants, patient, persistent, enduring. Rest now, you are doing beautifully. The story is more than halfway told. By the final stage of the Cretaceous period, a time geologists call the Maastrichtian, lasting from about 72 to 66 million years ago, the world supported an extraordinary array of dinosaur life. In North America alone, dozens of distinct dinosaur species coexisted: the tyrannosaurs and ceratopsians, the hadrosaurs and ankylosaurs, the pachycephalosaurs and ornithomimosaurs. It was, in many ways, the peak of dinosaur diversity, an entire world shaped around and by these remarkable animals. The forests and floodplains and shallow seas were full, life was rich, and there was no sign from within that world of what was coming. There rarely is. Let your eyes close a little more. Let the sounds of the ancient world wash around you, wind through conifers, distant water, the low calls of great animals moving through the dusk. The pachycephalosaurs were one of the most distinctive dinosaur groups of the late Cretaceous, bipedal herbivores, characterized by their dramatically thickened skull domes, which in some species were up to 25 centimeters of solid bone. It has long been hypothesized that these domed heads were used in head-butting contests between rival males, much as bighorn sheep clash today. More recent biomechanical analysis suggests the skulls may have been used for flank butting, ramming into the sides of opponents, rather than direct head-to-head collisions. Either way, the pachycephalosaurs were a reminder that even in a world of giants, the struggles of daily life, for territory, for mates, for survival, went on in all their familiar, vigorous detail. The ornithomimosaurs, sometimes called the ostrich dinosaurs, were among the fastest of all dinosaurs. These slender, long-legged theropods bore a strong resemblance to modern ostriches or emus, with small heads, long necks, and powerful hind limbs. Estimates of their top-running speed vary, but some researchers suggest that large ornithomimosaurs may have been capable of reaching speeds of 50 to 60 kilometers per hour over short distances, faster than any human, faster than most horses. They were likely omnivores, using their toothless beaks to feed on plants, insects, and small animals as opportunity allowed. Speed and adaptability, two qualities that serve any creature well. One of the most extraordinary dinosaur discoveries of the modern era has come from China, where exceptional fossil beds, particularly in the Liaoning province, have preserved not only bones but soft tissue impressions, including feathers, skin, and in some cases internal organs. These fossils have transformed our understanding of what dinosaurs looked like in life. Many small theropods from these deposits are preserved with detailed feather impressions showing the structure, color banding, and arrangement of their plumage. Some researchers have even been able to analyze the microscopic structures within fossil feathers to make inferences about color, suggesting that some feathered dinosaurs may have had iridescent, raven-like black plumage, while others had reddish-brown or even striped and barred patterns. Feathered, colored, vivid, not gray monsters but creatures of beauty and variety, as complex in their appearance as any bird alive today. Velociraptor, made famous by a certain film franchise, was in reality a rather different creature from its cinematic portrayal. The real Velociraptor was a small animal, roughly the size of a turkey, living in what is now the Gobi Desert of Mongolia approximately 75 to 71 million years ago. It had a relatively long skull, a sickle-shaped killing claw on each foot, and was almost certainly covered in feathers. Rather than the pack-hunting, door-opening giant of popular culture, it was likely a solitary or loosely social hunter of small animals. Its actual name means swift thief, which is at least accurate. It was fast, light, intelligent for a dinosaur, and undoubtedly formidable relative to its size. It simply was not the size most people imagine. The truth of the natural world is often stranger and more wonderful than the stories we tell about it. The Cretaceous period saw the diversification of the dromaeosaurids, the broader family to which Velociraptor belongs, into a range of sizes and ecological roles. While Velociraptor was small, some of its relatives were considerably larger. Utahraptor, which lived in North America approximately 126 million years ago, was a truly formidable animal, up to 7 meters long, equipped with enormous sickle claws up to 24 centimeters in length, and almost certainly feathered. It was perhaps the largest dromaeosaurid known to science, and represents the kind of predator that the velociraptors of popular culture were clearly inspired by, just existing 60 million years earlier, and in a very different world. The night is very still now. the story flows on, slow and deep as a river moving through dark country. One of the most poignant and extraordinary discoveries in all of paleontology was the so-called fighting dinosaurs specimen, a velociraptor and a protoceratops found locked together in the rock in the Gobi Desert, preserved in the exact posture of their final struggle. The velociraptor's sickle claw is embedded in the throat of the protoceratops. The protoceratops has the velociraptor's arm in its beak. They died together, and the desert buried them together, and 74 million years later we found them just as they were two animals at the last moment of a life-and-death struggle, frozen forever in the ancient rock. It is one of the most vivid windows into the reality of life in the dinosaur world ever discovered. Life and death locked together, as they always are. Let that image settle, and let yourself drift a little deeper into the quiet. We are approaching the end of the Cretaceous now. Not quickly, nothing happens quickly in deep time, but gently, inevitably, the way all great things eventually come to their close. The world of the dinosaurs has been extraordinary. It has been varied and vast and full of life. It has lasted in total for nearly 165 million years. And now, 66 million years ago, something is coming. In the final years of the Cretaceous, the Earth was already experiencing significant environmental stress, even before the catastrophe that would end the era. Massive volcanic eruptions in what is now central India, a region of volcanic activity known as the Deccan Traps, had been releasing enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere for hundreds of thousands of years before the end of the Cretaceous. This volcanic activity was already causing climate instability, ocean acidification, and stress to ecosystems worldwide. The world of the dinosaurs was, in some respects, already under pressure. What was coming would push it beyond all recovery. The great volcanic plains of ancient India, pouring smoke into a sky already darkening. The Chicxulub impactor, the asteroid that ended the Cretaceous, was a rocky body approximately 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter, traveling at an estimated speed of around 20 kilometers per second when it struck the shallow coastal waters of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, approximately 66 million years ago. The energy released by the impact was equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. The rock beneath the impact site was vaporized instantly. A fireball spread outward across the continent. A tsunami hundreds of meters tall radiated outward across the surrounding ocean, and within minutes, the sky around the entire globe was filled with ejecta superheated rock and debris hurled into the upper atmosphere, falling back as a rain of fire. Breathe, you are safe. This happened 66 million years ago and the world healed, and here you are. The immediate effects of the Chicxulub impact were devastating beyond comprehension, but the longer-term effects may have been even more destructive. The enormous quantities of dust, soot from wildfires, and vaporized sulfur that were blasted into the upper atmosphere circled the globe and blocked sunlight for months, possibly years. Temperatures plummeted worldwide as photosynthesis ground to a halt. Without sunlight, plants died. Without plants, the great herbivorous dinosaurs starved. Without the herbivores, the great predators followed. In the darkness after the impact, the food web of the entire planet collapsed from the bottom up, and almost nothing that was large enough to be visible to the naked eye survived on land. The darkness after the fire, the long, cold silence. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, commonly called the KPG extinction, eliminated approximately 75% of all species on Earth, including all non-avian dinosaurs. It wiped out the pterosaurs, the mosasaurs, the plesiosaurs, the ammonites, and vast numbers of marine invertebrates. It was one of the 5 great mass extinctions in Earth's history, and by far the most recent and the most studied. The Chicxulub crater, buried beneath the sediments of the Gulf of Mexico, was only positively identified in the 1990s, and the story of its discovery is itself a remarkable one, geologists following a trail of clues left in rocks around the world, converging on a single point of origin. We found the scar in the Earth, 66 million years old and still there. Not everything died. This is the fact that matters most, perhaps in the long run. Crocodilians survived, their semi-aquatic lifestyle and ability to go long periods without food giving them an edge in the resource-poor world after impact. Turtles survived, snakes survived, many lizards survived, most amphibians survived. And birds, the avian dinosaurs, survived almost certainly because of their small size, their ability to eat seeds that persisted in the soil long after the plants were gone, and their capacity to live on very little food for extended periods. The world was not emptied of life. It was pruned, catastrophically and terribly, but it was not emptied. And from the survivors, everything we know today would grow. The mammals that survived the KPG extinction were, almost without exception, small, mouse-sized to cat-sized at most. They had endured over 150 million years in the shadow of the dinosaurs, and now, for the first time, they found themselves in a world with empty ecological niches on every side. The forests and plains and rivers of the recovering Earth were open to them in a way they had never been before. And so, over the next tens of millions of years, they did what life always does in open space. They diversified, rapidly and extraordinarily, into the whales and horses and bats and elephants and primates that would come to fill the post-dinosaur world. The next chapter was already beginning. Even in the cold dark after the impact, something small was moving carefully through the ash. Let the thought of that small, careful thing comfort you. Life persists, life finds a way, and the darkness always eventually gives way to something new. The Chicxulub crater is approximately 180 kilometers in diameter and up to 20 kilometers deep. It is one of the largest confirmed impact craters on Earth, and despite being hidden beneath layers of sediment and ocean, its presence can be detected through gravity anomalies, the structure of the underlying rock, and the ring of cenotes, natural sinkholes, that marks the crater's outer rim in the Yucatan Peninsula. The indigenous Maya people built their civilization above and around the rim of the crater that ended the age of dinosaurs, unknowing of what lay beneath their feet. The past is always under us, one way or another. The past is always under us. Rest, the story is drawing toward its end, but it still has much to give. The fossil record of the dinosaurs is both richer and more incomplete than most people realize. On one hand, we have tens of thousands of dinosaur specimens from every continent on Earth, including Antarctica, where dinosaur fossils have been found preserved in the ancient rock of a continent that was once a warm, forested, dinosaur-inhabited land. On the other hand, the conditions required for fossilization are so specific: rapid burial, the right mineral conditions, the absence of scavengers, and then millions of years without being destroyed by geological processes, that the vast majority of animals that ever lived left no fossil trace at all. Every species we know is a survivor of two extinctions: the biological extinction of the animal itself and the geological near-extinction of its record. Every fossil is a survivor. Every bone in a museum case is something that almost wasn't. The study of dinosaur fossils has a surprisingly long history, though its interpretation has changed dramatically over the centuries. People have been finding large, unusual bones in the rocks for thousands of years. In ancient China, such bones were believed to be the remains of dragons and were ground up for use in traditional medicine. In medieval Europe, large fossil bones were sometimes interpreted as the remains of giants or of creatures from biblical narratives. The first scientific description of a dinosaur bone in the Western tradition, a thigh bone of what was probably Megalosaurus, was published in 1676 by the English naturalist Robert Plot, who believed it to be the femur of a giant human being. The bones were always there, we simply had to learn how to read them. The word dinosaur was coined in 1842 by the English paleontologist Sir Richard Owen, who recognized that the large fossil reptiles being discovered across England represented a distinct and previously unknown group of animals. He combined the Greek words deinos, meaning terrible or fearfully great, and sauros, meaning lizard, to create the term dinosauria. Owen's original conception of the dinosaurs was of massive, elephant-like creatures walking with their legs sprawled to the sides, much like modern lizards. It would take over a century of further discovery to reveal how wrong and how right he was about the animals he had named. A word born in 1842, for creatures that lived 66 million years ago, language reaching across all that time trying to hold something vast. Some of the most significant dinosaur fossil discoveries have been made not by professional scientists in remote wildernesses, but by amateur fossil hunters, farmers, and children walking along eroded cliff faces and riverbeds. Mary Anning, one of the most remarkable figures in the history of paleontology, was a self-taught fossil hunter from Lyme Regis in England, who, beginning in childhood in the early 1800s, discovered multiple complete ichthyosaur and plesiosaur skeletons, as well as the first pterosaur found outside Germany. She had little formal education and no professional credentials, but her knowledge of the local rocks and her extraordinary eye for fossil material made her contributions to the science invaluable, even though she received little recognition in her own lifetime. We owe the past to people who were willing to look carefully at the ground beneath their feet. Dinosaur eggs and nests have been found on every continent, and they have taught us a great deal about the reproductive strategies and family lives of these animals. Dinosaur eggs varied enormously in size, from tiny eggs the size of a tennis ball laid by small theropods, to large, elongated eggs up to 60 centimeters long laid by some titanosaur sauropods. Some nesting sites show evidence of communal nesting, with multiple females laying eggs in close proximity, behavior seen today in some species of crocodile and bird. Embryos preserved inside fossil eggs have allowed paleontologists to study the development of dinosaurs before hatching, and in a few extraordinary cases, even to identify the species of the animal inside. A world of nests, a world of parents and young, a world that was in many ways unexpectedly familiar. Trace fossils, the preserved evidence of dinosaur behavior rather than their physical remains, have provided some of the most vivid glimpses into the living reality of the dinosaur world. Trackways preserved in ancient mudflats and sandstones show us how dinosaurs walked, how fast they moved, and sometimes how they interacted with one another. A remarkable trackway site in Colorado shows the parallel tracks of a large sauropod and a large theropod moving in the same direction, the theropod tracks showing a change in pace that some researchers interpret as the beginning of a predatory approach. We cannot know for certain what happened, but something happened on a day 150 million years ago in soft mud beside an ancient river. The mud remembered, even when everything else was forgotten. Dinosaur skin impressions have been found associated with fossils of several species, preserved as natural molds in the surrounding rock. They show us that many dinosaurs had skin that was pebbly and textured, similar in some ways to the skin of modern crocodilians or large lizards, but also that skin texture varied significantly between species and even between different parts of the body on the same animal. The discovery of skin impressions from a Tyrannosaurus rex specimen suggested that at least parts of the T-Rex body were covered in small, pebbly scales rather than feathers in adulthood, though the debate about the extent of feather covering in T-Rex continues among paleontologists. The texture of an ancient skin, pressed into mud 66 million years ago. Let that image drift softly through your mind, the skin of the ancient world still holding its shape. In 2005, paleontologist Mary Schweitzer made one of the most astonishing discoveries in the history of dinosaur science: the recovery of what appeared to be preserved soft tissue, including flexible, transparent structures resembling blood vessels and round structures resembling red blood cells, from inside the fossilized femur of a Tyrannosaurus rex. The discovery was controversial and debated intensely, but subsequent analyses have supported the interpretation that original biological molecules, or their chemical descendants, can survive in fossils for tens of millions of years under certain conditions. The implications for our ability to study the biology of extinct animals are extraordinary. Something of the living animal still present in the stone, still in some fragmentary and molecular way there. We are near the end of our journey now. The Cretaceous has ended. The non-avian dinosaurs are gone. The world has moved on through the age of mammals, through ice ages, through the rise of grasslands and whales and great apes, and eventually through something even stranger and more recent, us. But the dinosaurs are not entirely gone. They never were. And as we come to the close of this long, slow story, let us gather what remains in the rocks, in the air above us, in the world all around. The preservation potential of a dinosaur fossil depended enormously on where and how an animal died. Animals that died in or near water, in rivers, floodplains, lakes, or coastal environments, had a far greater chance of being buried quickly enough to fossilize than those that died on dry upland ground, where carcasses were typically consumed and scattered. This means that our fossil record is deeply biased towards species that lived in lowland, waterlogged environments. The dinosaurs of upland forests and dry highlands are likely dramatically underrepresented, perhaps almost entirely absent from everything we know. The picture we have is real, but it is incomplete in ways we may never fully understand. We see them only where the mud was kind enough to hold them. New dinosaur species are still being discovered at a remarkable rate. In the early years of dinosaur paleontology, a new species might be named once every few years. Today, on average, a new dinosaur species is formally described and named approximately once every 2 weeks. The age of discovery is not over. There are entire continents, particularly Africa and South America, where large regions remain geologically unexplored for dinosaur fossils. The history of life on Earth is still being written, page by page, by the people willing to walk the desert and chip carefully at the rock. A new dinosaur every 2 weeks, the past keeps giving. Some of the most spectacular recent dinosaur discoveries have come from China, which has become one of the most productive regions in the world for Cretaceous dinosaur fossils. Chinese paleontologists and their international collaborators have described hundreds of new species in recent decades, many of them small, feathered theropods that have completely transformed our understanding of early bird evolution and the appearance of non-avian dinosaurs. The Yixian Formation in Liaoning Province, in particular, has produced fossils of extraordinary quality and variety. a window into a forested Cretaceous world of feathered creatures that has no equal anywhere else on Earth. The largest dinosaur ever discovered, and thus the largest land animal known to science, is likely Patagotitan maerum, a titanosaur sauropod from Argentina described in 2017, with estimates of its length reaching up to 37 meters and its weight approaching 70 tons. When a life-size cast of its skeleton was installed in the American Museum of Natural History in New York, the animal was so large that its neck extended out of the main gallery hall into the corridor beyond. It is almost beyond imagining a living animal, breathing, walking, feeding, that was heavier than a dozen elephants and longer than a blue whale. And it was real, it walked on this earth, it breathed this air. The deepness of the past is not empty, it was full in every direction of life. The long-necked sauropods achieved their extraordinary size through a combination of biological adaptations unique in the history of vertebrate life. Their vertebrae were riddled with air-filled cavities, pneumatized, like the bones of modern birds, which made their enormous skeletons significantly lighter than they would otherwise have been. Their respiratory system was likely similar to that of modern birds, with a flow-through lung design that extracted oxygen from air with far greater efficiency than the mammalian lungs we use. They grew extremely rapidly, reaching adult size in perhaps 20 to 30 years, and their long necks allowed them to feed over a vast area without moving their enormous bodies, a critical energy-saving strategy for an animal that needed so much food. Birds, as the living descendants of theropod dinosaurs, carry more than just their evolutionary heritage. They carry physical structures that are directly homologous, the same structures, modified to those of their non-avian ancestors. The wishbone of a chicken, the furcula, is a direct descendant of the fused clavicles seen in many theropod dinosaurs including Velociraptor and T. Rex. The air sac system in a bird's body, which extends into the hollow bones, is the same system seen in the pneumatized vertebrae of sauropods. When you see a bird, you are not merely looking at an animal that descended from dinosaurs. You are looking at a dinosaur that never stopped evolving. A bird is a dinosaur that kept going, past the asteroid, past the cold, past the long darkness, out the other side. The color vision of birds is far more acute than our own. Where humans have 3 types of color receptors in our eyes, birds have 4, allowing them to perceive ultraviolet light that is entirely invisible to us. This means that a bird's world is richer in color than anything we can directly experience. And since birds inherited this visual system from their dinosaur ancestors, it is likely that many non-avian dinosaurs also saw the world in 4-color vision, perceiving colors and patterns in the feathers, skin, and frills of their companions and rivals that we will never be able to see. The dinosaur world was more colorful than we can know. More colorful, more vivid, more beautiful than we can directly know. We can only imagine the edges of it. And perhaps that is fitting. Some things are meant to be imagined rather than seen, to be felt rather than measured. The total duration of the age of non-avian dinosaurs, from the first true dinosaurs in the Triassic to the KPG extinction, was approximately 165 to 170 million years. To put this in human terms, if we compressed the entire history of the dinosaurs into a single day of 24 hours, our own species, Homo sapiens, would not appear until the final 6 seconds before midnight. Everything we have ever done, every civilization, every discovery, every piece of music, every word ever spoken, all of it took place in the last 6 seconds of a day that the dinosaurs owned entirely. 6 seconds, breathe that in. And yet here we are, and here they still are, in every sparrow and every crow and every wandering albatross over the Southern Ocean, riding the wind on the hollow bones of their ancestors. The study of dinosaurs has itself undergone a profound revolution in the last 50 years, a revolution often called the dinosaur renaissance, which began in the late 1960s and early 1970s with the work of paleontologists like John Ostrom and Robert Bakker. Before this period, dinosaurs were broadly considered to be slow, cold-blooded, and doomed failures, evolutionary dead ends. The dinosaur renaissance overturned almost every aspect of this view, establishing that dinosaurs were active, warm-blooded, behaviorally complex animals with a living legacy in every bird on Earth. The story we tell about the dinosaurs today is, in almost every important respect, the opposite of the story that was told 50 years ago. Science changes its mind. This is not a weakness, it is its greatest strength. Let that thought settle gently over you, the willingness to change the story when the evidence demands it, to say we were wrong, here is what we now know. Some of the most significant advances in our understanding of dinosaur biology have come not from new fossils at all, but from new technology applied to old ones. CT scanning has allowed paleontologists to look inside fossil skulls without damaging them, revealing the structure of dinosaur brains, inner ears, and nasal passages in extraordinary detail. Synchrotron analysis has revealed growth rings in fossil bones, like tree rings, allowing scientists to determine the age and growth rate of individual animals. Chemical analysis of fossil teeth has revealed information about diet, migration patterns, and even the environments in which individual animals lived. The fossils themselves have not changed, but our ability to ask questions of them has become almost miraculous. The Gobi Desert of Mongolia has been one of the most productive regions on Earth for dinosaur fossil discoveries, particularly from the late Cretaceous period. The American Museum of Natural History expeditions of the 1920s, led by Roy Chapman Andrews, made a series of spectacular discoveries in the Gobi, including the first dinosaur nests and eggs ever formally identified by science, and numerous species of small theropods, protoceratopsians, and ankylosaurs. Andrews himself was a remarkable figure, part scientist, part adventurer, and his expeditions, conducted in an era before modern roads or communications across the Mongolian steppe, represent one of the great episodes of scientific exploration. Across the red sands of the Gobi, the bones of the past lay waiting, patient as the desert. Argentina and Brazil have proven to be among the richest sources of Triassic and early dinosaur fossils in the world, yielding specimens of some of the oldest known dinosaurs, as well as some of the largest titanosaur sauropods. The Isquigualasto Formation in Argentina, sometimes called the Valley of the Moon for its barren, otherworldly landscape, preserves fossils from the very dawn of the dinosaur age, when the first true dinosaurs were taking their first steps in a world still dominated by other reptile groups. Walking through that landscape today among the eroded grey and purple badlands is as close as a living person can come to standing in the world of the earliest dinosaurs. The Valley of the Moon, where the dinosaurs were born. The largest carnivorous dinosaur discoveries have come primarily from two regions, North America and South America. In North America, Tyrannosaurus rex remains the benchmark. In South America, Giganotosaurus carolinii, discovered in Patagonia in 1993, rivaled or slightly exceeded T-Rex in length, reaching perhaps 13 meters or more, though it had a proportionally lighter, narrower skull and likely a somewhat lighter overall build. The two animals never met. Giganotosaurus lived approximately 30 million years before T-Rex, but their parallel evolution as apex predators on separate continents is a vivid example of the way that ecological roles, once established, tend to be filled by whatever animals are available to fill them. Two tyrants on two continents, 30 million years apart, shaped by the same pressures into similar forms. Life finds its shapes, and then it finds them again. You are very close to sleep now, perhaps. Let the thoughts come and go like slow water. There is nothing to hold, nothing to keep, just the story moving gently around you. The non-avian dinosaurs are gone, and yet in a very real sense they have left their mark on the world we inhabit today. The coal seams that powered the Industrial Revolution, and that have shaped the modern world in ways both remarkable and difficult, were formed largely from the compressed remains of carboniferous forests, laid down before the dinosaurs even existed. The oil and natural gas beneath the Earth's surface, the fossil fuels that have defined the last 2 centuries of human history, are the compressed remains of ancient marine organisms, including the plankton of Cretaceous seas. The age of dinosaurs is not merely history, it is the fuel in the engine of the present. We are, in a very literal sense, still running on the ancient world. The dinosaurs changed the world they lived in, and the world they lived in changed them. This is what evolution means at its grandest scale, not merely the adaptation of individual organisms, but the co-evolution of entire ecosystems over millions of years. The flowering plants and their insect pollinators, the hadrosaurs and the plants they ate, the tyrannosaurs and the ceratopsians they hunted, all of these relationships shaped one another over time, producing a world of extraordinary complexity and interdependence. Ecology is not background, it is the story itself. Antarctica, now one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth, was once a warm, forested, dinosaur-inhabited continent. Fossils of large theropods, hadrosaurs, and sauropods have been found in Antarctic rocks from the Cretaceous period, at a time when the continent was positioned further north and covered in conifer forests rather than ice. The polar regions, we now know, were not empty of dinosaurs. Some species appear to have lived through polar winters, enduring months of darkness in ways that suggest either migration or physiological adaptations for coping with low light and lower temperatures. Even the ends of the Earth were theirs. All of it, all the world, was theirs, for 165 million years. The blue whale, the largest animal alive today, and the largest animal known to have ever lived, can reach up to 30 meters in length and 170 tons in weight. Even the blue whale in terms of sheer mass is likely exceeded by the largest titanosaur sauropods. Patagotitan may have weighed 70 tons or more. Other titanosaurs, Argentinosaurus, Dreadnoughtus, Notocolossus, were similarly enormous. The largest land animals in Earth's history were the dinosaurs. The largest animals in total may be the great whales, but the contest is surprisingly close. Life has repeatedly found the boundaries of what biology permits and pushed against them. Life is always testing the edges of what is possible. The discovery of the Chicxulub crater and its definitive link to the KPG extinction is one of the great detective stories of modern science. The chain of evidence began in the 1970s, when geologist Walter Alvarez noticed a thin layer of clay at the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary in rocks near Gubbio, Italy. Analysis of this clay layer by his father, physicist Luis Alvarez, revealed extraordinarily high concentrations of iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids. The same iridium layer was subsequently found at the KPG boundary at hundreds of sites around the world, evidence of a global catastrophe, concentrated into a single geological instant. A thin line of grey clay, pressed between the world of the dinosaurs and the world that came after, visible if you know where to look. The KPG boundary layer is visible in outcrops of rock around the world, in cliff faces, in road cuts, in the walls of canyons. A dark layer, often just a centimeter or two thick, marking the exact moment of transition between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene. Below it, fossils of ammonites, mosasaurs, non-avian dinosaurs. Above it, none of those things, just the beginning of the world we recognize. The boundary is a geological heartbeat, the before and after of an entire era pressed into stone. You could put your finger on it if you stood before the right cliff face. You could touch the end of the age of dinosaurs. The recovery of life after the KPG extinction took time, but it was faster than many people imagine. Within a few million years of the impact, mammalian diversity had already expanded dramatically. Within 10 million years, the world was again rich with complex ecosystems, forests returning, insects diversifying, the first large mammals evolving to fill the ecological roles left vacant by the non-avian dinosaurs. Life does not mourn its losses for long. It moves forward with remarkable urgency, filling every available space, exploring every possible form. Forward, always forward, into the next morning, the next season, the next world. Let that momentum carry you gently now, forward and down into the warmth of sleep. The birds, the surviving dinosaurs, diversified enormously in the aftermath of the KPG extinction, filling ecological roles previously occupied by non-avian dinosaurs and pterosaurs. The first large, flightless birds, some of them formidable predators, appeared in the early Paleogene, running on powerful legs through forests recovering from the extinction event. Gastornis in the northern hemisphere and the terror birds of South America were among the dominant land predators of their time, dinosaurs, still, in every technical sense, adapted once more to the role of apex predator in a world temporarily without large mammalian carnivores. The dinosaurs were never truly gone, they simply changed their clothes. Today there are approximately 10,000 to 11,000 species of birds alive on Earth, more than twice the number of mammal species. They inhabit every continent, every ocean, every ecological niche from the highest mountain to the open sea. They include the smallest warm-blooded vertebrate, the bee hummingbird of Cuba, weighing less than 2 grams, and soaring albatrosses with wingspans of over 3 meters. They dive to extraordinary depths, navigate by magnetic fields and starlight, and some migrate tens of thousands of kilometers each year. The dinosaur lineage, in its avian form, is among the most successful vertebrate groups in Earth's history. More bird species than mammal species, the age of dinosaurs did not end, it transformed. If you have ever watched a crow solve a problem, or observed the way a heron stands perfectly still at the edge of water, or listened to the song of a wood thrush deepening the silence of a forest at dusk, you have been in the presence of a dinosaur. The lineage is unbroken. From the first small, feathered theropods of the Triassic, through the great Jurassic and Cretaceous radiations, past the fire and the dark of 66 million years ago, and into the present, the dinosaurs have never stopped. They are here in the morning outside your window. They were always here. They were always here. Let the thought of them rest with you now, the ancient lineage still living, still singing. Paleontology, the study of ancient life, is at its heart an act of profound imagination. The fossils are real, the rocks are real, but the living animal, its color, its sound, its movement, its smell, the warmth of its body in the afternoon sun, all of that must be imagined, carefully and rigorously, from the evidence left behind. Every reconstruction of a dinosaur is a collaboration between science and imagination. between what the rocks tell us and what we choose to do with that information. The best paleontologists are also, in some sense, storytellers, reading the stone and finding the living creature within it. Science and story working together, as they always have. The study of ancient DNA has transformed our understanding of the prehistoric world in many domains, but for the non-avian dinosaurs, DNA retrieval remains beyond our current reach. DNA degrades over time, and even under ideal conditions, it is unlikely to survive more than a few million years. The non-avian dinosaurs died 66 million years ago, far beyond the reach of any foreseeable DNA extraction technology. Jurassic Park, for all its wonder as a story, remains fiction. We cannot bring them back. We can only know them, and knowing them, as it turns out, is extraordinary enough. We can know them, and knowing them is enough. The influence of the dinosaurs on human culture has been immense and enduring, from the dragon myths of East Asia, which some researchers believe may have been inspired by the discovery of dinosaur fossils by ancient peoples, to the great natural history museums of the 19th and 20th centuries, to the blockbuster films and children's toys and scientific journals of today. The dinosaurs have occupied a central place in human imagination for as long as we have been finding their bones. They speak to something deep in us, a love of scale, of wildness, of the deep past. They remind us that the world is old and strange and vast beyond our ordinary comprehension. Old, strange, vast, and somehow familiar. The paleontologist Jack Horner, one of the most influential dinosaur researchers of the 20th century, has spent much of his career arguing that dinosaurs were fundamentally different from the monsters of popular culture. In his view, the dinosaurs were first and foremost animals driven by hunger and fear and the need to reproduce, navigating a world of ecological relationships, constrained and shaped by the same evolutionary pressures that shape every living thing. To see them this way, not as monsters but as animals, is to see them more clearly, and to find in that clarity something more wondrous than the monster ever was. An animal, just an animal, living its life in the world it was given, as all of us do. The concept of deep time, the almost incomprehensible vastness of geological time, is one of the most important and least intuitive ideas in all of science. Our minds are built for human-scale time, years, decades, lifetimes. We can grasp with effort centuries and millennia. But millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, lie beyond the reach of intuition. We can only hold them with the help of comparisons and stories, and yet deep time is the context in which everything real has happened. The entire span of human history is, in geological terms, an eye blink. The age of the dinosaurs was a long, slow dream. A long, slow dream, and you are in this moment dreaming along with it. Dinosaur fossils have been found on every continent on Earth, including Antarctica. Each continent has its own dinosaur fauna, shaped by its geographical isolation and the particular conditions of its ancient environments. The dinosaurs of Africa are different from those of North America. The dinosaurs of Australia, still relatively poorly known, are different from those of Asia, and yet certain themes repeat: the large sauropods, the theropod predators, the armored and horned herbivores. Life finds its shapes wherever it is given the space and time to do so. The same shapes found again and again on every shore. The word paleontology itself comes from the Greek, paleos meaning ancient, ontos meaning being, and logos meaning study, the study of ancient beings. It is a young science by some measures, little more than 200 years old, and yet in that time it has uncovered a past richer and stranger and more varied than anyone who named the science could possibly have imagined. The ancient beings have exceeded every expectation we brought to finding them. The ancient beings exceeding every expectation. There are children alive today who will make dinosaur discoveries that we cannot yet imagine. New species, new behaviors, new understandings of old bones. The science of paleontology is not complete. It has barely begun in the grand scheme of what there is to know. The rocks still hold their secrets, the deserts still hold their bones, and the people willing to walk patiently through the ancient landscape, looking carefully at the ground, will keep finding things that surprise us. The age of discovery is not over, it is never over. There is always more to find, always more to know, always more to wonder at. The dinosaurs lived and died in a world without us. They did not know we were coming. They did not imagine, in whatever way animals can imagine, that one day a small, upright creature would dig their bones from the rock and try to understand them, would build museums in their honor, would paint their images on the walls of children's bedrooms, would write books and make films and stay up late at night reading about the details of their lives. They existed for themselves, as all living things do, and yet they have given us something extraordinary, a window into the deep past, a reminder of the scale of time, a story that is still being told. They lived for themselves, and yet they gave us everything. And the last fact, the one that perhaps matters most of all, is this: the dinosaurs are not gone. They are here, in the birds that circle above every city, in every sparrow that lands on a window ledge in the morning light, in every penguin that dives beneath Antarctic ice, in every swift that cuts the summer air with scimitar wings. The lineage is unbroken. The long thread of life stretches back without interruption from the earliest feathered theropods of the Triassic through 230 million years of change and catastrophe and renewal to the birds that will sing outside your window when the morning comes. When the morning comes, listen for them. They are old, far older than they look. And so is the world. And so is the night. Sleep now. The dinosaurs walked this earth for 165 million years. The birds carry that lineage still through the dark, above the sleeping world. You are resting in a very old story. And the story is still going. Good night.